Imagine a world where half of everyone you know suddenly vanishes. Not in a snap of fingers, but in a wave of suffering that sweeps across continents, leaving silence and fear in its wake. This isn't the plot of a blockbuster movie. It's the stark reality of the 14th century. We're about to journey back in time to one of the most terrifying chapters in human history, the Black Death. So what exactly was this great pestilence? We call it the Black Death today, and it was a devastating pandemic of bubonic plague that stormed through Afro-Eurasia from 1346 to 1353. The numbers are staggering, almost impossible to comprehend. Historians estimate that it wiped out anywhere from 30% to 60% of Europe's population. Let that sink in. In some cities, the death toll was as high as 75%. It was a cataclysm that reshaped society from the ground up. To understand the sheer terror of the Black Death, we need to meet its microscopic villain, a bacterium named Yersinia pestis. This tiny organism is the culprit behind the plague. But how did it travel so far, so fast? Well, it had some very effective and very sneaky accomplices. The primary carriers were fleas, specifically the oriental rat flea. These little bloodsuckers would feast on infected rodents, like the black rat, which were common passengers on merchant ships crisscrossing the globe. When a flea bit an infected rat, it would ingest the Yersinia pestis bacteria. When this ravenous blocked flea tried to feed on another host, say, a human, it would regurgitate the bacteria-laden blood into the new victim's wound. And just like that, the infection would spread. This is what we call bubonic plague. The name comes from the most infamous symptom, buboes. These were agonizingly painful, swollen lymph nodes, typically in the groin, armpits, or neck, that could grow to the size of an apple. They would often turn black and purple as the tissue inside died, which is likely where the name Black Death originated. For most, death was swift and certain, usually within a week. If the bacteria reached a person's lungs, it evolved into an even more contagious form, pneumonic plague. It was almost 100% fatal and could kill within a day or two. There was also a third, rarer form called septicemic plague, where the bacteria entered the bloodstream directly, causing widespread bleeding and tissue death. It was so rapid that people could literally go to bed feeling fine and be dead by morning. Now, where did this all begin? Most evidence points to the arid plains of Central or East Asia. From there, it traveled along the Silk Road, the bustling network of trade routes that connected the East and West. By 1343, it had reached Crimea, a critical hub for trade on the Black Sea. It was here, at the Genoese trading port of Caffa, that one of the earliest and most chilling accounts of biological warfare took place. The city was under siege by the Mongol Golden Horde, whose army was being ravaged by the plague. In a desperate and gruesome act, the Mongol leader, Johnny Beg, ordered his soldiers to catapult the infected corpses of their dead comrades over the city walls. The defenders inside were horrified. As the disease took hold within Caffa, Genoese merchants fled by sea, desperate to escape. They didn't know it, but they were carrying the plague with them. In October 1347, 12 Genoese ships docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. The people of Messina gathered at the port to greet the sailors, but what they saw was a ghost fleet. The Sicilian authorities quickly ordered the death ships out of the harbor, but it was too late. The rats had scurried ashore, the fleas had found new hosts, and the Black Death had officially arrived in Europe. From Sicily, the plague spread like wildfire. It reached the Italian mainland and then fanned out across the continent. It moved north through France and Spain, crossed the English Channel to England in 1348, and pushed into Germany, Scandinavia, and eventually as far as Russia. No corner of the continent was safe. The speed of its spread was terrifying. Remember, this was a world without cars or planes. The disease traveled at the speed of a ship, a horse-drawn cart, or a person walking. Life in the 14th century came to a grinding halt. Imagine the scene. Streets littered with the dead and dying. Carts would roam the cities with the chilling cry, "Bring out your dead!" Entire families were wiped out in days. Homes were boarded up, with the sick and healthy trapped inside together. Doctors, or what passed for them at the time, were powerless. Dressed in their strange beaked masks, filled with herbs to ward off the bad air, they were more a symbol of death than of healing. People were desperate for an explanation. Why was this happening? With no knowledge of germ theory, their explanations were rooted in superstition, religion, and fear. Many believed it was a divine punishment from God for humanity's sins. This led to a surge in religious fervor. Processions of flagellants, people who would whip themselves in public penance, traveled from town to town, hoping to appease an angry God. Ironically, their crowded gatherings probably helped spread the disease even further. Others looked for a scapegoat. In a tragic and dark turn, Jewish communities across Europe were falsely blamed for poisoning wells and intentionally spreading the plague. This led to horrific massacres and the destruction of entire Jewish quarters in cities throughout Germany and France. The sheer scale of death had massive social and economic consequences. With up to half the workforce gone, labor became incredibly scarce. For the peasants and serfs who survived, this was a radical shift. Suddenly, their labor was in high demand. They could demand higher wages, better conditions, and more freedom. The old feudal system, which had bound peasants to the land for centuries, began to crumble. This newfound power for the common person sparked social unrest and a series of peasant revolts across Europe. The plague also had a deep psychological impact. Art and literature from the period became obsessed with death. The danse macabre, or dance of death, became a common artistic theme, depicting skeletons leading people from all walks of life, popes, kings, peasants, to their graves. It was a stark reminder that death was the great equalizer. But out of this darkness, some glimmers of light emerged. The crisis forced a rethink in public health. Cities like Venice and Milan pioneered quarantine measures, isolating incoming ships and travelers for 40 days or 40 giorni, where we get the word quarantine, to see if they developed the disease. It was the birth of modern public health administration. The Black Death wasn't a one-time event. The plague returned in waves for centuries, though never with the same devastating force as that initial outbreak. It left an indelible scar on the human psyche and fundamentally rerouted the course of Western civilization. It challenged faith, shattered social structures, and ultimately, in a strange and brutal way, paved the way for the economic and social changes that would lead to the Renaissance. It is a powerful reminder of how vulnerable we can be to the unseen world of microbes and how a single pandemic can change everything. The story of the Black Death is a somber but crucial chapter in our shared human story, a testament to resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. Thanks for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this history fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Let me know in the comments what historical event you'd like to explore next. See you in the next one.